get back to my. Let's share this for a second on Twitter. All right, we're back. We're back. What's up? What's up? Ian Hawk in the house. Thank you for joining us. I've got my playoff beard working. And shout out to Jordan the Lion, who got me this very cool To Earl, an elite comic. Kenny Omega, my favorite professional wrestler here. I'm just chugging along toward my 4,000 hours of hours before I can charge people to talk to me. No, I'm just kidding. It's a Stanley Cup final prediction episode. The final Earl live stream on hockey until next season. And how did we get here? We're going to go through the rounds. I'm going to give you my prediction. And then we'll get back to stand-up comedy content. I know this is the worst angle in live stream history. What can you do? So round one, Western Conference. The Seattle Kraken defeated the Colorado Avalanche in 7 games. Quite the upset. Just Kraken, they're the real deal. They're an expansion team, yes, but they have built a good team, and they're going to be good for a long time. Shane Wright coming next year. Another forward who will bolster their roster, and I think they're in pretty good shape with the salary cap. So I don't believe there are any issues there. They could take a swing at a big free agent. So the Kraken are definitely a team to watch. I mean, that Western Conference, I think, is going to start being like the Eastern Conference, where you have, one or two, look at this year in the East. You had Pittsburgh and Washington, two pretty good teams. They didn't even make the playoffs. So watch out. And then you had the Dallas Stars beat the Minnesota Wild 4-2. Very tight series, very physical series. That was a series that frankly could have gone either way. And then you have my beloved Los Angeles Kings defeated by the Edmonton Oilers and the great Connor McDavid. And the scary thing about this series was the Kings kind of maintained Connor McDavid. I mean, they limited what he was doing. Unfortunately, they didn't limit what Leon Draisaitl was doing, which is the rub with the Edmonton Oilers. You can stop McDavid, you can stop Draisaitl, you can't stop both. And the bottom 6 for Edmonton definitely was outperformed the Kings' bottom 6. But we'll get into the Kings' off-season plans a little bit later. And then you had the Vegas Golden Knights against the Winnipeg Jets. Vegas won 4-1. And, that series is probably most memorable for the press conference after by Rick Bowness, the Jets coach, basically calling out his team publicly, which you rarely see outside of John Tortorella. You got a pretty good indicator of what players won't be coming back. Because I don't know one player in that locker room who is going to want to play for that coach. So the Jets are definitely an interesting team to see what's going to happen in the offseason. You can't fire 20 players. It's pretty easy to fire one coach. But, we'll see. So, a very interesting first round. Now we'll go to the first round results in the Eastern Conference. The Toronto Maple Leafs took out the Tampa Bay Lightning. And that's going to be an interesting offseason for the Lightning. Some may say their window of opportunity is past. And they have some expensive players on that team. Hedman, Vasilevsky, Stamkos, Sergachev, uh, Point, Killorn. I almost said Kilborn. Um, so they're kind of in a salary cap pickle. Because what do you do with a guy like Pat Maroon, who probably, I don't know how much he makes, but like, can you keep a guy like him and who's essential to, the structure of that team? And then you had probably the biggest upset so far in the playoffs, the Florida Panthers, the Stanley Cup finalist, who had that in their bracket, defeated the Boston Bruins in 7 games. Boston on paper should have won the Stanley Cup, the best regular season record ever. And all kinds of records within that record, the quickest to, I think, 60 wins, and all other kinds of records like that. Thank you. When you only have 4 people listening to this, you can really respond fast individually. Hold on, let me get that light out of the way. This is a work in progress. My background. I do have a sound man coming to make the viewing a little bit better for you guys. But getting back to the hockey, the Bruins just, they're an interesting team. There's going to be a lot of interesting off seasons in the NHL. Because what do the Bruins do? They're somewhat of an older team. Marchand coming off, I think, double hip surgery, and some of their core is aging. DeBrusque, McAvoy are certainly not aging, but do you keep them, or do you do a miniature rebuild? Thoughts on the Atlanta? Oh no, there's no way Atlanta's getting a third NHL team. If I can bet my condo, my Jeep, and my Kenny Omega signed picture, Atlanta will not be getting a third NHL team. And that's a joke I do sometimes in my stand-up act, and I don't know if it was on purpose or not. I'll assume it was. That when the Atlanta Thrashers were playing, they seemed to draft and trade for a lot of African American players, which in theory makes marketing sense, because Atlanta, at least where the arena was when I went, because I wanted to see Kovalchuk, it was in an urban area. So I thought that's pretty genius. And they were all good players, like Johnny Oduya, Evander Kane, and several others, Jean-Luc Grandpierre. And then the team got relocated to Winnipeg, where there's probably not 5 black people in Winnipeg. So I always, in my heart, want to see Quebec get a second chance. And that's an interesting city. It's a hockey mad city. And it would be awesome to see the Quebec-Montreal series. You're talking about Danny Heatley and Schneider, Daniel Schneider, I think, in the car crash. I don't think that hurt. I mean, it definitely didn't help the Atlanta Thrashers, but I think they would have been relocated, whether Heatley got into that accident or not. But I don't know if players actually want to play in Quebec because of the taxes. If you polled privately off the record any NHL player said, where would you rather play? In a hockey mad city like Quebec, where you will be treated like royalty and pay insane taxes. I think it's probably 40% taxes for an NHL player, especially if you're American. Because in America, like I learned this through Roast Battle recently, where I was double taxed. I was taxed in America and I was taxed in Canada. So the 25 grand or around that I won, I probably literally took home 7,500. I'm not complaining, but so you can imagine what it would be like for a guy making 7, 8, 9 million dollars there. If you said, would you rather play in Quebec or Florida or Nevada or Dallas, where there's no state income tax, they'll be like, hey, I'd look pretty good in a Panthers jersey. So, who should get it? I just don't think Arizona should have a team. And it's not, and they're going to be a really good team. I mean, they've got some great players coming in. They're going to get some great players in this draft. I was kind of rooting for them to get Bedard because then in my fantasy, I think it would be very appealing for Austin Matthews to play in Arizona with Bedard and kind of it's the Cleveland Barons were, pro hockey in Cleveland. I don't think was sustainable. It's nothing against Cleveland, but they can barely support the Cavaliers and Browns. And let's be honest, hockey isn't exactly an Ohio, love affair. So, but I have a feeling the next NHL team will be in America. I've heard Hartford. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. In the South. I mean, I think, obviously hockey in the South can work. Look at the Stanley Cup Finals. You've got the Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars. You talk about two non-hockey markets. You could really, and I think it'd be interesting if they put one in Portland. That'd be a great rivalry. I don't know. Seattle would dig that. I don't know. Hartford had its chance, and it's a great fan base for sure. But I don't, I've heard. I think not Wichita, but there was one. Houston and Utah. Houston's a big city, and I could see it working there. You'd have to win though, like in Houston, for them to uh, draw consistently. Utah, there's nothing to do there, so I could see it kind of being like Edmonton, whereas Edmonton, it's really that's all there is to do up there is watch the Oilers. I've been there and walk around the mall, which can take a while. It's a big mall. But I don't know. I would just love a Canadian team. Quebec's the clear choice, but both need new arenas. Mud Pig Army. Okay, we got some MLC and Chad Zumach people coming in now. It's a hockey podcast. Thoughts on the Bruins? Well, it's funny. I was just wrapping up their. I was just wrapping up their series with Florida. It's the great thing about hockey and really all sports is the obvious isn't the obvious until you play the game. On paper, they should have won the cup. They had an amazing season, the greatest season of all time, a season that may never be duplicated. But they're in an interesting situation, like I said a few minutes ago. And thank you to the 12 people listening to this right now. Hit the likes, like everyone else says. And then, when I do get my ability to do super chats and whatnot, I'm going to read every question. The one thing I don't like about the current wave of live streams on YouTube is it is really morphed into a Jerry Lewis telethon. Give me money or I won't talk to you. I'll get to that Toronto question in a second. In terms of the Bruins, they're kind of an older team. They're not ancient, but they are older. And well, yeah, I don't know if Beach Cops is a hockey podcast. So they got some, the brutal thing about sports, and the Kings learned this the hard way. Loyalty is awesome, but at some point it hurts you in terms of the team. You look at Marchand, you know, I wouldn't be opposed if I was a Bruin fan of trading him because, double hip surgery, that's going to catch up to him at some point. And then you're going to be left with an asset that you'll be lucky to get a fifth round pick for. Pasternak is in his prime, so he's good there. DeBrusque and McAvoy, a few others, but they have some decisions to make for sure. In terms of Toronto, I got the feeling that, listen, if you're the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're not really the GM. Shanahan is. So I didn't think they were going to. I mean, I get, Dubas is a young guy. He probably is at the age now where he's like, I want to make the decisions. I don't want to look over my head or shoulder and, have Shanahan vetoing or questioning every decision of a player I want to bring in or want to trade. I mean, once again, Toronto is another team that you have to, they're going to have to make some decisions. I mean, because they're four core, Tavares, Marner, Matthews, and I think O'Reilly would be considered their four core. They make a lot of money, man. Just those four guys alone probably chew up 30% of your salary cap, maybe more. So what do you do? What do you do with a Ryan O'Reilly? Do you bring him back? Does he want to play at a discount? It's tough. So, Dubas has his work cut out for him, though, in Pittsburgh. They have no draft picks. They have no really grade A prospects coming in. They have an aging core. I mean, as insane as it sounds, can you imagine how fast the rebuild would take if you traded Crosby and Malkin? I mean, if you traded those two, and I know this isn't fantasy hockey, but let's just say they said, hey, we're going to start from scratch. F it. You could probably get, if you traded those two combined, so this is combined, not for one, 3 to 4 number one picks, and probably a dozen second round picks, third round picks, and your rebuild is almost complete. But if you hold on to those guys, and Jeff Carter and Letang, you might eke into the playoffs, but you're going to get blasted by like a Carolina. So it's, I think the Penguins are going to be like the Steelers in the '80s, where the Steelers held on to everyone out of loyalty for winning 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, which is awesome, but it also cost the Steelers the ability of drafting Dan Marino. Steelers could have had Dan Marino. Instead, they drafted, I think, Gabe Rivera, who was a good player, but he wasn't Dan Marino. So I think with the Penguins, it's a very similar situation where, you're caught in the that middle ground of, hey, Sidney Crosby and Malkin, they've won us 3 cups, but that's been a minute. So getting back to the second round, we'll cover the second round now. For those of you just joining us, thank you. We're just doing a recap of the NHL playoffs, and then I'm going to give a Stanley Cup prediction. The Dallas Stars defeated the Seattle Kraken in 7 games. The Kraken, they are really going to be a powerhouse because they're young, they're fast, they're big. You got a big guy like Alexiak on the back end, Vince Dunn, and they've got some really good players coming in. Shane Wright, I think, is going to be a great player. Bernier is he's the real deal. So, but they just fell a little bit short. But very good for a second-year team. No shame in losing to the Dallas Stars, who are the other Stanley Cup finalists. The Vegas Golden Knights defeated the Edmonton Oilers 4-2. I just think the Oilers ran out of steam. McDavid and Draisaitl, you got to have secondary support, and they're an interesting team. Because what do you do with some of their guys who are like on the bubble? Yamamoto, Nugent Hopkins kind of disappeared. Hyman played okay. He had the one overtime winner against the Kings, but I mean, it's really clear. And Ekholm was great. I mean, I think the Kings were in on him before they got Gavrikov. So, the Edmonton's a team that we'll get to that in a minute, Hayden, in a minute. There's a lot of interesting teams and what they're going to have to do this year. So, getting into the second round, the Carolina Hurricanes defeated the New Jersey Devils 4-1. I mean, Carolina's a great team, and if they played, in a hockey market like Toronto, it'd be like, oh my God. Oh, I forgot to say the Rangers beat the Devils. I'm sorry, the Devils beat the Rangers in the first round, and a very tight series. Well, I don't think the Wild fell apart. It's just Dallas is a good team. So let me just make sure I didn't miss any chats. Yes, I mean Eichel, he's a great player, and he's finally, I think, proving, hey, Buffalo effed up. But the Carolina Jersey series, it really wasn't close. Devils just seemed off the whole series, and it's the Devils are on the right path though. They've got a lot of youth, decent farm system. So if you're a Devils fan, you're in good shape. And then we got the Toronto Maple Leafs, who lost to the Florida Panthers 4-1. This is a tough one because if you look at the series, game one, the Panthers won 4-2. It was a tight game. Game two, it was 3-2, tight game. Game three is 3-2 overtime. Game four, the Leafs won 2-1. And in game five, Panthers won 3-2 in overtime. So it's not like it was a blowout. The series was a lot closer than, 4-1. But, in Toronto, that's just not good enough. Toronto might as well be a sweep, and you lost every game by 7 goals. So now we'll get to the conference finals. The Vegas Golden Knights defeated the Dallas Stars 4-2. Interesting series, physical. Probably most known for Jamie Benn cross-checking Mark Stone in the face. But then the 2 games Ben was suspended for, the Stars won, and then Ben came back and they got blown out. So that's going to be an interesting storyline in the offseason. Ottinger, the goalie in Dallas, he looked a little off, and he's their driving force on that team, I think. But, Vegas is a very good team. Once again, like Carolina, if they played in a traditional hockey market, they'd be more talked about. But, they're out playing in a fucking desert. Yeah, I mean, definitely, and probably the Wild's hands are tied with some gigantic contracts, and unfortunately, I think it's what was it, Suter and Parisi. Those contracts. It's just dead money. It's like the Kings are still paying off, I think, Mike Richards' contract, but he won them 2 cups. So in that case, I think if you ask most King fans, Mike Richards was worth it. The juice was worth the squeeze there. So, unfortunately, Minnesota, they've got some cap issues, and, the cap issues are hard to get out of. The Kings have navigated that minefield pretty good. I mean, I think this might have been the last year for Fanuff's deal, and I think Gabrick had some dead money, but Rob Blake and Dean Lombardi was trying toward the end, but Rob Blake has survived the contract minefield pretty well. You're out of control, mama. And now no crosstalk in the chat. And then you had the Carolina Hurricanes take on the Florida Panthers. And, once again, on paper, this was a sweep. But if you look at game one, it's 3-2 and 4 overtimes. Game two, overtime. Game three was a 1-0 game. And game four was a 4-3 game. I mean, you could easily make the case that the Hurricanes could have swept Florida. So, a very, very tight series. And, that has led us to, and what time is it here? Let me check my watch. In about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, the way TV does it, the Stanley Cup Finals start. We've got the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights. I think I said Dallas was in the Stanley Cup Finals earlier. I just woke up, so sorry about that. Florida and Vegas, this is the Stanley Cup Finals for where all Jews go to retire. Vegas and Florida. So, but both have good fan bases. I mean, Vegas has a great fan base. I did see a few empty seats in the Florida arena. I'll assume that won't happen during the finals. I mean, Florida's another state or hockey area where did the Coyotes make it? Get out of town, dude. Out of control. If I had a moderator, I'd have him ban you for that question. Hello. I think this series is going to go 7 games. I mean, I'm picking the Florida Panthers in 7 games. Shout out to the Jews. Yes. I don't bet anymore. I'd rather buy a leather jacket, but this is a series I would stay away from if I was betting because it's just too close. I mean, it's a coin flip. I will start doing the football podcast, probably on my own. I love Mel TV Live and Pigskin Lover, but I think I'm better off doing shit on my own. But we'll see. We got some time before I have to make that decision. What Kachuk brother is better? Well, I would say that absolutely the one playing for the Florida Panthers is better. But Brady is a good player. Well, it's hard. I think Vegas, George McPhee, who was ironically one of my favorite players as a kid because he was a tough guy, but he was, he's only about 5'9", 160, 170, and he would fight guys like Dave Brown and do well. He's the reason why Vegas was so good as an expansion team because he stockpiled players and, I think at one point they had well, you didn't ask me who was more physical. I think Kachuk in Florida is a better player. But which Hatcher brother is? I'm going to go with Kevin. Kevin was, it depends what you want. Kevin was the more offensive-minded. Darian was the tougher, shutdown type defenseman. But if you said, hey, you can have one, I mean, it would depend on the team. If I had a smaller, like if I were the LA Kings, let's say we can go back into a hot tub time machine and the Hatcher brothers both are in their prime and the Kings needed the defenseman because the Kings need a little more physical grit, I would pick Darian. But Kevin's a pretty good player. Like Kevin, I would say should go to Edmonton. But George McPhee, he built that team by I think at one point they had like he picked 14 defensemen, and people were like, "What the fuck are you doing? Um, you ain't shutting me out, Holmes." Well, no, but the question was who is better now, and uh, I think the Florida Kachuk is the better player right now. And 7 years from now, it's probably going to be Brady because he's bigger, and he. But Florida Kachuk he's a pretty special player. But McPhee, I think when he was doing the expansion draft, how he was doing it, people were like, "What are you drafting 14 defensemen for? Like, you only need 8." But he used those other 6 for capital. And unfortunately for Ron Francis in Seattle, he was trying to do the same thing, but teams caught on to him. So he had a much tougher go of it. And I think, both, McPhee benefited from really the Knights being the only expansion team coming in. And so he got the best of the best selections. And unfortunately, like I said, Seattle also came in by themselves, but all the GMs had wised up to what Francis was trying to do because they learned their lessons from McPhee. Oh no, you're not stockpiling all these guys, and we're going to take them off your hands and give you just picks. So, but I think a fantastic rebound in the second year by Ron Francis of building the Kraken, and now here they are. Uh, yes, fighting's dead in hockey, but like I'm 54, so I grew up in almost the nuclear arms race of hockey. Where the Flyers obviously and the Big Bad Bruins were the models for you got to have 3 to 5 players on your team to fight. Big Earl, what position would Carol Shelby's wife play if she was a hockey player? I'll guess tight end. Hello. I'll get back to you on that one. Believe me, she was good at things coming at her face and stopping them. Um, the missing teeth days of the missing teeth days of hockey. But like getting back to like the Bruins and the Flyers had basically set the standard of you need 3 to 5 guys who can fight on your team. And then the Rangers would go, okay, we're going to go out. We're going to trade for Barry Beck. We're going to trade 5 players for Barry Beck. We're going to draft Ed Hospodar. We're going to draft Eddie Johnstone, Frank Beaton, the Maloney brothers, Carol Vadnais could fight, and then other teams, the Maple Leafs were Tiger Williams, and Sittler was a tough guy, a great player, but a tough guy. So every team, the Kings were, going out and getting all these tough guys to combat, the other teams, and obviously the Alberta wars with Edmonton and Calgary, where Edmonton would go out and get Dave Brown, the Oilers would go out and get Paul Cruz, and I mean it was crazy. But nowadays someone asked me the other day if you had it really was an arms race. Someone asked me to name the top 5 fighters in the league, and I struggled to name 5 guys who fight. Well, getting back to the Penguins, I just think there's nothing left on the cupboard. They have virtually no young talent. So, they're not going to trade Crosby or Malkin, but, like I said a couple minutes ago, if you did, your rebuild will be done in 1 year. You're not going to win the cup with them, so trade them. They will not win another cup with Crosby and Malkin. Look at, and Letang's aging. Carter's aging. They have and their goaltending situation's wonky. The return on Malkin and Crosby would be staggering. Like I said a couple minutes ago, you'd get 3 to 4 number 1 picks. You'd get multiple second round picks. You'd probably, let's just say, and obviously Malkin and Crosby have a say in where they want to go, but like, let's just say, and I don't think either one would say, I'll play in Arizona, but you could get Arizona's pick this year. You get the kid they drafted last year, Gunther, who's going to be a real good goal scorer, and probably two or three other pieces. My favorite team in all of pro sports. I mean, I like the Kings and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm a little partial to the LA Kings because they come see me at the Comedy Store a lot, as does the Ontario Reign. Well, I mean, yeah, the WHA, they had some rough players for sure. But, now in hockey, the lack of fighting is starts in the juniors, where I remember my friends and I would run out and get the Hockey News Draft Edition. They would do, I think, a breakdown of the top 100 players, and we'd all like scour it for the tough guys. And, there's no fighting in juniors anymore. I think if you fight in juniors, they kick you out of the game. And I think face shields have really deterred fighting a lot. I mean, I've hit a face shield before in a fight in my ball hockey league, and it's like hitting a brick. Yeah, I do want to go see a Steelers. I'm going to see the Steelers twice this year in California. Oh, not California, but they play the Rams and the Raiders. So I am going to check that out. I can't wait. See Kenny Pickett. I've never seen him. But getting back to the Stanley Cup Finals and fire the questions away. As you can tell, I can dive in and out of chat. The Panthers and Vegas. I do. The Predators. Hello. I mean, Patrick Waugh coaching in Ottawa would be pretty cool, and he's a pretty good coach. He had a weird end in Colorado, but that'd be huge. I mean, boxer briefs keep my ball hockey game in check. I don't wear a cup when I play ball hockey, and I've seen one of my teammates lost a testicle because, ball hockey, like I have a really hard wrist shot, and one day last year, someone brought a radar gun out, and my wrist shot was clocked at 83 miles an hour. So you've got to figure the Subway Predators. Hello! The Quiznos Sandusky's. Pew! So you got to figure my ball hockey slap shot is 100 miles an hour plus. And there's guys who shoot it harder than me out there. There was this one kid, Eric. He's like a pro ball hockey player from Slovenia. He was like a McDavid of ball hockey. Best player I've ever seen. He had a shot much harder than mine. So, I think, it's going to be an interesting finals. It's going to be a very physical finals because you got Florida, you've got Kachuk, Gudis, Bennett, Lindell. Not Lindell, Lomberg. And Vegas has more than enough guys. Carrier's, a rough and tumble player. McNabb is tough. I heard the Predators were coming to town, but was disappointed when it was D'Elia and Callan. Come on, man. I'm on a gag order. I mean, Oakland's tough. I mean, I do feel bad for them. But if you look at that baseball stadium, it's literally 80% empty every game. That's embarrassing for the league, I'm sure. The Raiders, they're vagabonds. They'll probably move from Vegas at some point. You know, I tell you, and I don't think it would, it'd be an interesting maneuver, but if Oakland got a hockey team and they were the only sports team in the city, uh, that'd be a baller move, though, because they would get support. Um, but I have not heard their name in the mix. I mean, I think, like someone said earlier, Utah and Houston are probably the top choices. Hartford's a long shot, and Quebec's an even longer shot. I just don't. It's embarrassing for the Coyotes, who their arena plans were rejected to play in a college arena. Like, that's fucking embarrassing. Um, but we'll see. I mean, it's an interesting time in the hockey world. To have a Vegas Florida Stanley Cup Finals is so funny to me. And it'll be interesting, the TV ratings. I do like how TNT does it. I think Bissonnette, uh, McGuire, and Anson Carter are a great three-man team. Shane Doan is a legend, no doubt about that. And I do like Lundqvist. He's very good on TV. Gretzky, I don't know. He doesn't seem comfortable on TV, but he obviously his insight is amazing. Yeah, I mean, Oakland is, I'm sure they had a hard time getting free agents. I mean, if you're a free agent and, say the Angels contact you and it's like, hey, you want to play with Trout and Otani, obviously the Yankees are always in on the mix, or the Dodgers, they contact you, or do you want to play in a half-empty stadium, beyond a half-empty stadium in Oakland? Yeah, I mean, Oakland kind of reminds me of Detroit, just a downtrodden city. And, unfortunately, it's not going to get better anytime soon. But, we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't see them ever getting another football team again. I mean, I guess you could say Golden State is. It's not really in Oakland, so that's something that I guess you could latch your hat onto. But I think it would be funny if they were given a hockey team and it was the only sport in the city, in the actual city of Oakland, and that became like the in thing to go to. So I don't know. It's got to be a bummer if you're an Oakland Raider or Oakland A's, fan. Just you got to go to Vegas to watch your team. But Vegas is an interesting city. Now, I'll be honest with you. I didn't think the Golden Knights would do well because I've done a fair amount of comedy in Vegas, always opening up for Rob Schneider, and the Rob's so cool. He's like, yeah, just do what you want. Do a half hour, do whatever. And, the casinos would yell at me for doing so much time. And I'd be like, well, Rob told me to do a half hour. And, like, we want this show to be maybe a little over an hour. Like, you do 10, 15 minutes, he does an hour. And then we want people fucking gambling in the casino. I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't think that, that every minute you're watching a hockey game, and yes, I do think the A's will do well in Vegas, but every minute you're watching a Raider game, a Knights game, and next season an A's game, you're not gambling, so you're not losing money in the MGM Grand or whatever. So I don't know if the casino owners, I think on the record, they're, oh, this is great for the city, the taxes and all that shit, but they want you in the casino losing money, not out getting a sunburn. Yeah, I mean the heat's definitely going to be a factor. I mean, thank you. I mean, House of Comedy. Here's how it works. And I don't like to use my fans as my promoters, but if you want to see me play at your comedy clubs wherever you are, if you tweet or Instagram the comedy club, say House of Comedy in Scottsdale, say, hey, we want to see Earl Skakel. Then they reach out to me and say, hey, you want a headline, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's just the way it works. All comedy clubs care about, here's a dirty secret about my business. They want you to fill the room. Of course, it helps if you're funny. That's all they care about. They want to know if people are going to come to see you. What up, Zoom? So obviously I'm funny. I could always get funnier, but if you tweet at the House of Comedy or where's another club? Just for Laughs, the comedy festival in Montreal. Which I've done twice with Roast Battle, but I want to do it as a comic because Roast Battle isn't comedy. It's just skilled bullying, to be honest with you, which I was good at. Full disclosure. And I've got some Cooper Blues. I'm not sure. I don't know what you're talking about, to be honest with you. By the way, breaking news: the new coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets, Mike Babcock. Breaking news. I still have my Skakel Army shirt. That is one of the greatest. For those of you who don't know, my first um, time on television was doing roast battle in Montreal, and when I watched when I walked out, I was fucking nervous, man. I'm like, my heart's beating a mile a minute. I'm facing Tom Ballard, who in a previous season, an untelevised season, beat Hinchcliffe, and he was just killing people left and right. I'm like, this is my first opponent. Notice how I was the only one that never got an easy battle. Fuck you guys. People wonder why I'm so bitter on that show. Like, there was one person who had a bracket of 3 people who never fucking roasted before. I get Tom Ballard and Jimmy Carr. Eat it. I beat both of them. So, you know, actually tweeted Comedy Central and Jeff Ross. That always helps. Thank you. Oh, well, I mean, I was a little off my game on the Flair roast, but hold on. I think I missed the question. Did you watch? I did watch the new Dark Side of the Ring. I'll get to that in a second. But when I walked out there against Tom Ballard, I'm scared. It's for I'm on TV. The hundreds of thousands, or well, let's be honest, it's Comedy Central. 20 people are watching. There's probably 1,000 people in this not arena but room that they built. I will say Comedy Central did do a good job because in the untelevised season of Roast Battle, it was just an empty room with chairs. But for the season 1, my season, the only season I acknowledge, which by the way was an illegally run television show, but we'll get into that at another time. There's a thing called conflicts of interest when it's a cash prize. And when you have executive producers who are also judging, when you have executive producers who are also managing talent and judges, it's a little on the rocks. But I looked out to my left right before my battle started with Tom, and my man was wearing a Skakel Army T-shirt. And I literally almost forgot my first joke. I was like, oh my God, that's so fucking cool. And then, like, Tom's looking at me like, it's your turn, bro. Hello. So, did I watch the new Dark Side of the Ring? I did. It was very well done. I mean, there's a million. I mean, this show could go on forever. Dark Side of the Ring. It really can, if you think about it. There's so many sad stories in wrestling. I mean, I think this upcoming week is Magnum TA, who I got to meet at the Ric Flair roast. And I started crying, man. I had to walk away. I said, let me get you some water, bro. Because, I walked by him backstage, and he looked pretty familiar. He's still got the big stash. A little less hair, but he's in not a wheelchair necessarily, but like a chair that helps him get around, I guess. And I stopped. I'm like, shit, that's Magnum TA. Now, for those of you who don't know who Magnum TA is, let's just say, like, I'm 54. He was like my John Cena, the perpetual good guy, had a fantastic feud with Nikita Koloff. And to show you why wrestling was so much better when I watched it as a kid, in that very famous contract signing between Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff, you'll notice that they keep going to Magnum TA's mom, and she has this really concerned look on her face. And you're like, wow, she's a fucking great actress. And the funny thing was Magnum TA had not told his mom, hey, this is all a work. This is fake. I actually know Nikita Koloff. He's a great guy. So when Nikita Koloff jumped over the table to beat him up, like, his mom thought it was real. So she starts crying. So that's why pro wrestling was so much better back then. Who knew that Nikita Koloff was from Minnesota? But I think, he lived this gimmick so hard, he actually changed, I forget what his real name is, but he actually changed his name to Nikita Koloff. And when he was out, like, even in his hometown of Minnesota, where everyone knew him, he would only speak Russian. until some. Well, I mean, we got like Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and I really knew of them through magazines, and then through replays of I think on ESPN two. Um, yeah. I mean, it's just such a sad story. I mean, I literally got on one knee when I was talking to him because I didn't want him to look up because I think his neck is still fucked up. But he was so nice, man, and I think his son took the picture. Like, I'll post it next Tuesday when the episode, or Wednesday when the episode airs. But oh no, it's Tuesday. Sorry, it's on Vice, channel 271 on DirecTV, and he couldn't have been any nicer. And um, I mean, yeah, there's so many MAGA TA. Why you bring your mama here? Who taught you English, Shaq? Come on, dude. We got about 10 more minutes before I got to call it. It's Pride parade is outside my house. I got to walk Lois on the streets before it gets too cracked out with the freaks. The day drinking right now in LA right now, it's probably about 90, and people are just getting hammered outside. And Lois don't like that shit. But she also got to go potty. And for those of you asking, I did not end up adopting Jelly, the blind foster dog. She's a lot more work than I anticipated. Which wrestler would I want on Nikita Koloff. I told him I would read his book first and then interview him. He said yes. What's his name? Bill Watts. Shoot. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're about the same age, given what you just said. I do this as a joke on stage, but you really did think it was real back then in the mid 80s. You really thought Nikita and Ivan Koloff were from Russia. You really thought the missing link was from parts unknown. You really thought Kamala was from Uganda or whoa, sorry about that. I just knocked down my Wi-Fi router. But you really thought that Abdullah the Butcher was the madman from the Sudan. I forgot who sent me this. And if you're in chat now, expose yourself. Because of all the things I've accomplished in comedy, and I'm not a famous comic or whatever. I don't think too many famous comics are doing a live stream for 12 people on YouTube right now. But I do it for the fans. But Jelly is a blind French bulldog who was fucking awesome. But of all the things I've accomplished in comedy, my favorite thing are two things. One, getting that Abdullah the Butcher doll from a fan who sent it to the Comedy Store. And at the Ric Flair roast, my man Stephen K., who was the coordinator, hope he doesn't mind me saying his name, gave me a check, and then in a mafia-like handshake, he said, and this is something extra, and it's the greatest thing on earth. Oh, you're welcome, Ross. It's model 1 of 1. I still get excited seeing it. The Earl Skakel wrestling doll. Model 1 of 1. So, oh, thank you. That's a true story, Steve. True story. So, as you can see, we start off doing hockey talk, but, we can branch into other areas. Let me just see. Oh, you asked me about the homeless problem in L.A. It's fucking brutal, man. And I don't get too political, but, they're just everywhere. I mean, when I moved to West Hollywood, I bought this condo right after 9/11. It's the only way I can remember, like, the accurate time when I moved here. I'd walk the neighborhood. Because the great thing about my neighborhood, I will say this, there's gyms. There's like 3 gyms. There's 3 health food stores. There's 3 of everything. 3 markets. And so you can walk to everything. That's why I lease my car now, because I don't drive that much. I think in what was it, the Hellcat, I had was it 12,000 miles a year, so 36,000 miles for a 3-year lease. And when I brought the car back, I think it only had like 13,000 miles on it. And I had driven to like Arizona a few times. So if you take away those Arizona trips and Vegas, I think 1 or 2 Vegas trips, like I literally probably drive around 10,000 miles a year. No, not 10,000 miles a year. I probably drive maybe 5,000 miles a year. So I'm a great guy to lease because my car, even my Jeep, right now, I think I have 13,000 miles and I've got about 8 months left on the lease. Um, so, uh, the home. But when I moved here, there was probably, since I walk a lot, and especially with the dogs, you get to know the neighborhood homeless people. And there was like 5 of them. And I would say now, in 2023, there's probably 30 neighborhood homeless people. So it's gone from 5 to 30. Favorite UFC fighter? I don't really watch the UFC anymore, to be honest with you. Tim Gaethje, he's exciting to watch. Um, Other than that, well, leasing's good if you don't drive a lot. Like in my early days of comedy, when I had the Dodge Magnum, I mean, I think in 7 years, I think I put 120,000 miles on that car because I was driving to every gig. Like I drive to San Diego. Driving to San Diego for a gig 15 years ago was like driving to the Comedy Store for me is now. I wouldn't hesitate in doing it. I mean, I drove to Medford, Oregon for one show and drove back that night. That's a 12-hour, 9 to 12 hour drive. And that's from LA to Oregon and back. That's 1,000 miles or whatever it is. So I would never, I either fly to a gig or I just don't do it. Because I do a lot, voiceovers is, really awesome. And next week I have a meeting on several streaming possibilities. So, I mean, like I said, I don't like talking politics on here just because you divide half your audience. But, and it's probably a little too simplistic of a way to fix the problem. But, when I drive to Vegas and you see these gigantic patches of land, like to me, it's like, why not build basically like a super Walmart size building for homeless people, and in it you have health care, mental care, um, you know, medical care. I guess it's the same as health care. You have job training, and you reacclimate them into society by giving them training. But it's hard because I know a guy. He's a comic actually. He's not very funny. He's like a I wouldn't even call him an open mic comic. He's just, he does comedy more for social reasons. He's homeless. And he panhandles on, well, I think most people in the podcast wars need mental care. But he panhandles on this really popular corner, Wilshire and San Vicente. If you're in LA, you know the area. And, but he's not, like, he's normal. And I'm like, bro, Eddie, why don't you get a job, dude? Like if you cleaned up a bit, you could work at any store in the mall. And he's like, bro, I make $200 a day in cash. Um, I'm not going to make $200 a day in cash working at Nike or Abercrombie and Finch. No, it's not Melrose Larry Green. I said he's a comic. Hello, Baba Booey. I used to love seeing Melrose, but fuck, is that guy annoying? Um, but and I get it. I know there's this one. I live in the first stand-ups panhandlers. Hello, I'll do the jokes, Chief. There's a really good-looking guy. He looks like, yeah, definitely no income tax. He looks like an Abercrombie and Finch model, and he's really smart. He panhandles by the Bank of America on Santa Monica Boulevard, and he does it without a shirt on, and he's got this great body. I don't know if he works out at a gym or if he just does push-ups or whatever, like the Herschel Walker workout. Um, I don't think Melrose has died, and Ross, I might. I did like the sandwich, to be honest with you. But he makes tons of money. Um, I don't know if Chad unblocked me on Twitter. So I could see why that guy wouldn't get a real job. Like he probably makes 100 to 200 bucks a day in cash. Probably I could even see he's so good looking. I could see him doing sexual stuff for more money. We don't know if Boone Shakalaka is dead, but I believe he is. Um, I saw him a few times in the pandemic. He walking Lois late at night. Um, and it's sad. Just like he's a institution of LA open mic comedy and definitely a comedy store institution. By the way, I'll be on the comedy store Pride float tomorrow at the parade in West Hollywood. New vegan. Is the guy you're talking about Piven? No, I don't talk about Piven. Robert William Eprovaya died recently. Sunset Jesus died recently. Um, I mean, I'm around so much death in comedy, it doesn't even faze me anymore, which is sad. I posted a picture on, I think, Instagram the other day. It was on the Comedy Store stairwell. It was like me, Hinchcliffe, Don Barros. Yeah, I'm friendly with Bobby. We share the same birthday. And, yeah, Armenian comedian just died. And three people out of the eight people in the picture were dead. It was Sunset Jesus, Boone Shakalaka, and I think Bushman. And I didn't even get that sad, because I was like, oh, okay. Um, well, no one's seen Boone's, which is why we don't know if he's dead or not. But if you knew Boone, he would be up at the Comedy Store by now. I mean, the pandemic for no, Sunset Jesus was not resurrected. I used to give him rides home, and he lived in a really nice condo. Um, a lot of former NFL players died under the radar. Which has more to comedy or no. There can be crosstalk. I mean, which has more death, comedy or pro wrestling? It's funny. I always say it's very much like pro wrestling in terms of the deaths. I mean, I would say recently comedy, but like I mean, I would say, I mean, recently, Sunset Jesus. Now I'm talking L.A. comedy per se. Teddy Ray, who was a great comic. Not Jack Black, Jack Knight. The Armenian comedian. Boone. That's five people right there. Bushman. Um, that's not even me thinking. Like just names that come off the top of my head. And a lot of open micers that you guys probably wouldn't know. They passed as well. So I would say on average the last couple of years, 3 to 5 comics that I personally know have died. Some from illness, and some from suicide and whatnot. Well, it is like pro wrestling. I mean, so I do think it's a lifestyle. It's constant rejection, constant judgment, and you have to be very mentally strong to deal with it. It even gets me down sometimes. Um, I mean, shit. I remember when I got back from Montreal and roast battle. A lot of people didn't think I beat Jimmy Carr, and one of my friends was like, "Hey, why don't you go on Reddit? They're talking about you. You're really popular in the roast battle threads." And I thought, oh yeah, who doesn't want to read nice things? And every comment was Skakel's a faggot. He didn't beat Jimmy Carr. Got a death threat. If you ever come to the UK, you'll never get off the plane. It's like, what? You think being on TV for a comic at that time of 15 years who'd never been on television before, you think that would have been the greatest time of my life? Getting on Comedy Central, I think I was on Comedy Central. It was either 4 days, 4 nights out of 5 days, or 5 days out of 6 days. I was on the number one comedy network at the time, really the only comedy network. And I get back off that plane, I felt like Ric Flair. And I remember the first time I got to the Comedy Store after roast battle, I was treated like, Ric Flair at the Georgia Dome. And then that night I go on Reddit and I was like, I mean, I wasn't suicidal, but I was like, fuck this. And you certainly see that. You're seeing a little bit of that now in the podcast wars, where it's gotten so personal. People are talking about ex-wives, kids, deceased brothers, and whatnot. And we all put up a good fight on YouTube, but the podcast wars and really the comedy. You go on Reddit, it's the same thing. Um, it's basically an online roast battle, which is what I loved about roast battle. It's probably my favorite thing about that show is that if you wanted to call someone fat, that's fine. You can call them fat, but guess what? They're gonna be 6 feet to your left or right, and not only do you have to deal with calling someone something to their face, but they get to call you something too, and you're gonna hear a crowd react. So the keyboard warriors, you know, I don't like, but that's why I don't really get involved in the podcast wars. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I know I needled Brody the day he died because he was supposed to do my podcast, and I left him a message saying, "Hey, bro, the least you could fucking do is call me back," which I kind of felt bad about, but but Brody's there's another guy. Well, not really. I think very few people in the talking about specifically the podcast wars, they're not going to meet face to face. Because we're all over the country. I mean, I think Carl's in Rochester, Kevin's in New York, Chad's in Tampa, the Steel Toe crew is in Minnesota. I don't know where the Win by Two guys are, but they're I want to say Midwest, I think. And although I'm not in the podcast wars, I'm in LA. So it's a lot easier to talk shit knowing you'll probably most likely never see the person you're saying things about, which is what I loved about roast battle. Like, you felt the other person's energy as you were calling them fat, or they're calling you fat, and you felt the crowd. And if you got them good, they'd laugh. But if they got you good, they'd laugh. So I did enjoy that very much in the show's heyday. So, but yeah, there's unfortunately a lot of death in comedy, and there'll be more. It's and not to make it about me or whatever, but I'm in an even rougher section of comedy because not only do I still get rejected in the stand-up world, and believe me, people see me at the Comedy Store a couple times a week. They're like, "Oh, this guy's made it." I can't get a single comedy club to email me back for a date. You know, um, but I also get rejected. In the voiceover world every fucking week. So I get double rejection in two different fields. Now I'm not complaining, but well, it depends. They make money on the booze. When you think about it, comedy clubs are like bars. Let's take a beer. A beer wholesale probably costs that comedy club $1 or $2 to buy, and they sell it for $8. Bottle of water, it's an even higher markup. That bottle of water costs the comedy club maybe $1 wholesale. Now they're buying in bulk, but basically it costs $1. But they're selling that bottle of water for $8. So yes, they do make money, and they get the door. But the Comedy Store, like what's great about the Comedy Store is the main room, which is the gold standard for spots there. You split the door with the comics. So if it's a sold out room of 400 people, and there's 4 to 5 comics on the lineup, you get to split that door. I mean, it can be. I mean, I know when I did the Parlor Club in Seattle, that was a very obnoxious performing environment because those people got fucking hammered. I mean, the Parlor, and I don't think it's there anymore. It was in Bellevue, Washington, which is like where Bill Gates lives. So it's a lot of just entitled rich people who get hammered. I also, when I did Jacksonville, I think it was the Comedy Zone. Yes, Chad, you can. I mean, I don't know, bro. To be honest with you, on the Chad Brody thing, I try and actually stay out of stuff like that. Um, but it's possible. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I don't know, to be brutally honest with you. But in Jacksonville, it was the complete opposite of Bellevue, but it was like white trash drunks. Like they would bring a bucket of booze to each table with like some gigantic beer or something in the middle, and then beers all around like a moat. And I mean, it's fun. Like someone like me, it's fun because I love dealing with rowdy crowds because my, I'm not the best joke writer or whatever, but I'm very fast. So there's not a lot that can throw me. I don't know Neil Hamburger. I know the name. I don't know him. But there's not a lot that can throw me, to be honest. I've done comedy for so long. I've seen and heard it all. Um, so sure, Earl neon sign based on, yes, it is based on the rat neon sign. Uh, I mean, I think enjoy it. When you look at Brody, he was exploited on that show. To be honest with you, you know, um, and I personally would not have done the show if I were his manager. I'd be like, dude, you're just going to be made fun of, and it's like that's one of the things I didn't like about, say, roast battle is some people, especially the younger people on the show, they didn't have the mental capacity to deal with, like, if you were a fat person on roast battle and you were in your early 20s or mid 20s and you're being called fat and a whore and ugly on national TV, it might be fun and you might put on a smile while the cameras are on, but then you're going to go home, you're going to stare at yourself naked and go, I am fat, I'm a loser, and harm yourself. So, with Brody, I think it was fun to walk the red carpet. But I'm sure he went home at night going, "I'm a loser. I have to take all these pills to act normal." So, who are the young upcoming? A lot of the young upcoming comics at the store are actually door guys. There's a lot of. This is definitely the most talented group of door guys I've ever seen. And when I say door guys, I'm including women, door people, I guess. I mean, Bruce Gray just got passed. He's really funny. Cooper Lyden's very funny. Saul Trujillo is very funny. Joel Jimenez is very funny. You might know him as the drummer on Kill Tony in the old days, but he's a very funny comic. Jet Ski Johnson's really moving up the charts, and of the younger comics who are like paid regulars, or maybe not younger, but like comics you should know, like Steph Tolov is very super funny. Uh, oh, thanks. I love Ralphie, and Ralphie would laugh at those, like But that's the thing about roast comedy is if you know the person, you can say whatever you want. But if someone did a Ralphie May fat joke and they didn't know them, it's like fuck you, man. You didn't know him. I knew him, and I knew what a great guy he was. Steph's very funny. But like she's, maybe a newer comic in terms of her fame or whatever. So, uh, and she's one of the hardest comics I've had to follow. There's been a few times I've had to follow her, and we have opposite energy. So you might say we're a good match. And then there's so many funny comics. I'm trying to think. Trey Stewart's a funny guy. He just got passed at the Cellar in New York. Ron Taylor is great. He's passed. Stephen Fury's really funny. What up? What up? What up? I'm about to end this, so if you got a question, fire it off. I gotta walk Lois before the Stanley Cup Finals, and my oldest sister's in town, so I gotta go have some actual family time. I'm more than just a foul mouth comic. But if you are wanting to know where I got this neon sign, it's Radical Neon on Melrose. That's a radical with a K instead of a C. If you're local, and they're very fast. I've seen Painter do comedy. He's making a bit of a comeback, so be on the lookout for him. Magical Mo is deceased. I was told he died of a brain aneurysm or a tumor. So that made me sad because he was a really good dog. But I might, listen, that was $492, so I can't just be getting neon signs all the time. But when I start making money on the live streams and the Patreon, I'll get the plugs in right now just to get that out of the way. You guys know the deal. I'm at Earl Skakel on everything, including Patreon. EARLSKAKEL. And I don't do it for the money. I just do it for you guys and girls to say, hey, if you like what I do, but I'm not going to be in your area anytime soon, here's a way to support me. Dustin's great. He's a very cool guy. Viva Big Earl, yes. And listen, let's any retweets, are appreciated. Follows on Instagram if you're not following me. It's all about social media now. It's not about being funny. It's just not. There's comics who fill up rooms who don't have 10 minutes of material, but they have a lot of social media, and they will get booked over me. I'm not complaining. I'm just giving you the reality of this business. So I love you guys. 14 people in here. That's a lot for me. When you see Kevin Brennan have like 800, I think yesterday he had over 1,000 people. I like Jake Ely the best. Obviously, most people go with Randy Rhodes. Love you, man. And you too, bro. Thank you for all the support always. But I just like Jake Ely. It's a preference. Zach Wiles great. Who was the one guy? He wasn't in him that long. I saw him on the Osmosis. Joe Holmes. He was very good. I'm going to try and do more. I know, you think 23 years into comedy. I think Kevin's really funny. Peace, Rick. Thank you very much for the support. But I've got to be more proactive on YouTube. I know that. I'm trying to do my best. Thank you. I mean, I get along great with Kevin and Bob. I know Kevin roasted me a little bit, a couple weeks ago, but I didn't go back because I just don't do it that way. The social media statement is way too true. It's Munch. I'm trying to get. I mean, you're right, Munch. Munch is one of my longtime LA comedy friends. We started together. Sting is decent. But, social media is just, I don't want to blow up anyone just because some of these people are actually really nice. I mean, I was in the green room the other night at the Comedy Store, and I'll just say this reality star who's new to comedy is in the back of the main room, green room, which is hallowed ground. If you're a newer comic, I personally would not go back there because you probably don't belong there just yet. You haven't put in the work. And she was basically throwing off the vibe of, hey, I belong back here. I'm funny and all that stuff. And it's like, first of all, if you're funny, you don't have to tell people you're funny. They know. But she's a reality star and she's got, I think, a couple 100,000 followers. She will get booked over me. And I guarantee you, and this is nothing personal against her. No, it wasn't Brendan Schaub. This is not a popular opinion, but I got to be honest with you. Like, I didn't like Brendan's special, but he's always nice to me. So that's why I don't talk shit about him. The name of the neon sign is Radical, or not the name of the neon sign, Radical Neon, and that's RADIKAL instead of CAL. Neon. It's on Melrose Avenue. Yeah, but I mean, Schaub is a Palmer, no doubt about that. But whenever I run into him at the Comedy Store, he's nice to me. So I don't have anything bad to say about him. I know it's not popular. I know I'd probably get more views on this video if I said, "Oh, he's a piece of shit, man." But to steal a steel toe habit, I'm going to quote a movie, and I'm like Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. I'm nice to you till you give me a reason not to be nice. But getting back to the social media statement I made, it's true. I mean, clubs only care if you can fill the room. Yes, it's a bonus if you're funny. Now, I don't agree with that philosophy because to me, it's like, yeah, you can fool someone once, but you're not going to fool them twice. So, like this girl was in the green room the other night, she could probably fill a room. One Instagram story, hey, I'll be at this show tonight. And, she's probably going to bomb. I mean, I would guess she doesn't have 5 minutes. But, if you're headlining in LA, an LA headlining set's probably a half hour or 20 minutes. What are you going to do for that last 15 minutes? But, sorry about that. So, what are you going to do for that last 15 minutes? You might do well in 5 minutes, but Jim Florentine's the best. I love him. So, but I knew that's the deal. And I am trying, even though I think social media is a younger person's game, Kevin Brennan, whether you like him or not, he has paved the way for guys like me and not even necessarily older comics, but comics who have trouble doing a following. I mean, Kevin makes $30,000 a month, according to Patrick Melton, from his Patreon and YouTube. Why the hell would you want to do the road if you're making $300,000 a year? Now, you got to pay Adam, the producer, and Bob Levy, and I think Kevin pays his guest. But I'm doing this to build up a following because I like doing stand-up. I'm the opposite of most stand-ups. Most stand-ups do commercials and TV. Let me take that back. Most stand-ups do stand-up so they can get into movies and TV. I'm the opposite. I want to do movies and TV and cartoons so I can get better stand-up gigs. So, I'm against the grain, baby cakes. So that's it. I love you guys. We've done hour and 20 minutes. It's longer than I thought. So my prediction for the Stanley Cup Finals is the Florida Panthers in 7 over the Vegas Golden Knights. Daddy, man, why don't you do a run in New York City and try and hit up the New York podcast? I love New York. The Stand is my home club there. The booker is always, and the owner, very gracious to me. Always say, hey, come out. We'd love to have you. And I love New York. I love New York comics. They keep it real. So I think I would do well there. So never say never. Yes, Munch. I miss you, buddy. Munch is one of the good ones. But never say never to an Earl Skakel, New York appearance. I think the last time I was there, I was judging Naked Roast Battle at Skankfest. Had a good time. So, follow me at Earl Skakel everywhere. Look at me on Patreon. It's a lot of content. But, don't feel pressure to join it. Yes, please. And if you're ever in LA, anyone, DM me on Instagram a night before I'm performing, and I'll take care of you. And we'll do another. I'll try and do at least one stream a week. I don't know if I could do it like Kevin and Bob. I mean, Bob Levy's on like fucking 5 a day. I don't know if I can do that. Thank you, William. William Zoom, my #1 supporter right now. And just, if you want, share these live streams. The more eyes on it, the better gigs I could potentially get down the road. But Earl Skakel, over and out. Listen to Rat. I can vouch for you being a great dude in person when I met you right before COVID. I appreciate it, brother. When you have as few fans as I do, you got to be nice to the ones you have. And I really mean that. Like right now, I'm very thankful that there are 13 people watching this. Sounds silly when, Patrick Melton has like hundreds watching at a time. Kevin, Chad, the Shuley Network, and I'm happy with 13, but I'll take it. Because I'm not really in this business for the money. If you do comedy in LA for the money, you'll quit in about 6 months. So 23 years in, I'm still here. I love you all. Skakel, out.